Hello everybody, DonaldV2 here. We're just on a little pit stop for the road to Neon. As we approach the end of the line, we are going to do one last little thing. There are 3 games that I kind of wanted to mention. And for the Game Boy, there's 3 Double Dragon games on the Game Boy. And so, before we actually finish the series and finish it out right, let's talk about and actually proceed to the final game on the road, the actual main event. Let's take a quick pit stop to actually just look at these games and see what they're like and see if they're different from their NES or Genesis counterparts. Alright, the first game on our list is going to be Double Dragon 1 for the Game Boy. This game is very much similar to Double Dragon 1. For those of you who don't know, basically Double Dragon 1 is it's basically a side-scrolling beat-em-up, where the main goal is to save your girlfriend from the evil Shadow Gang, led by a guy who holds a gun named Willie. And that's pretty much your goal for the game. He has an army of male warriors named Williams and female warriors named Linda, and karate masters named Chin, and big muscly guys named Bobo. Those are the 4 pretty much major enemy types in the game, and that's pretty much your challenge, is to overcome these 4 different enemies and be able to actually reach, and some other group of enemies. I forget what their name is. The bald people. Let's just call them Krillins. So pretty much you're just trying to stop these 5, you're just basically trying to get past these different enemy types and try to head to their headquarters deep in the forest on top of a mountain. So, as far as so let's look at the good of this game. For one, all the moves are just like they were in Double Dragon 1. You have your punch, your kick, your drop kick, your elbow, the ability to grab them, and on top of that, you start off with those. There's no level building or nothing. You just start off with the elbow, with the ability to kick them, or to kick them, grab them by the hair and keep kicking them. You start off with that. It's kind of like the arcade version where you don't have to level up in that one either. Except I feel that the controls are a bit easier because the arcade one has some weird motion to do the elbow, and the elbow is not effective in either this game or that game. So it's not something you can really rely on as much. I mean, it still knocks them down in one hit, so you can use it, I guess, as it's originally intended, just to knock somebody back while you're trying to focus on somebody in front of you. Which is always kind of a good type of move to have in a beat-em-up game, because getting surrounded sucks. So, now, another pro on this is going to be the fact that the music in this game is actually pretty close to the original. I mean, it's Game Boy music, so it's not exactly as good as the NES counterparts, but it's still pretty good. It's still, you still get that heartbeat, the heart pumping Stage 1 Streets theme, and Stage 2 Warehouse theme, different things like that. And as far as that's concerned, there's actually one piece of music in this game that's completely different than the NES counterpart. In stage, for one, between the stages, it just shows a white screen in the mission. There's no little music bit between them like there is in the NES version. But on that exact same note, that music actually appears as the Stage 4 starting theme. The Stage 4 starting theme. It starts playing the intermission music, and it actually turns out that song apparently has a second verse to it, or a second bit to it, other than just the 3 little startup bump things that usually pop up. I don't know what I'm even saying anymore. Let's just put it this way, it has more to that song than just what the NES version has. and the arcade version has. So it actually plays the full theme there, and actually it's a really interesting and good theme. Alright, as moving on, next on the list here is of pros, is the game has a really good feel and controls. Pretty much as far as the feel goes, you have the ability, you're able to keep your own in the game. You're able to hold your own against the enemies, except for one exception. Pretty much, no matter what the enemy can throw at you, you have a way of dodging out of the way and hitting them before they hit you. And being able to actually take control of them and kicking their butts. Good times. And the controls right alongside that are pretty much just like they were in the NES version. A punches, B kicks, hitting them both together to the drop kick. If there's an enemy behind you, hitting the A button will throw a punch backwards. And if there's sometimes when you hit the enemy with a kick, you'll grab them by the hair and start kicking them in the face. I don't know if there's anything specific to that particular move. That's always how I figure it. It sometimes happens when you're kicking them. So the controls are pretty much just identical as they were to the NES version. It's a little bit off, but not too much, and it won't really make that much of a difference except for one situation. I'll get to that in a moment when I get to the cons. I'll get to the negatives of this game. So you're able to, but on that same token though, because the controls are so good, you're able to really hold your own in the fights. And anything the enemy can throw at you, you can either hit them in the face with the elbow, or knee them in the face. I think you can even throw them with, if you hit the A button while have them in the hair pull motion. You're able to throw them. So really brilliant controls and good game feel. And as far as the last thing I want to mention as a pro, mention as a positive of this game, the level design. Now it's not the exact same as the NES version. It's the same flow. You start in the streets, then you go to the warehouse, then you go to the forest, then you go to the base. But it's a little bit different. The first noticeable difference is at the end of the first stage, instead of having a Bobo pop out at the conveyor belt area just to fight him there, you actually have to go into another room, and he's in this little room by himself. It's like a control room or something. Looks like there's computers or something there. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, you get there, beat him, and then you move on to the next stage. So stage 2 actually feels more like a side-scroller until the very end when you actually get to the top, and then it's actually a flat area, which is completely opposite, because that's the exact opposite of what the other game did, of what the NES version does. The NES version has it completely normal until you climb up the building. This is opposite, where it's side-scroller until you get to the top of the building, then it's beat 'em up style. And there's enemies. There's actually a couple waves of enemies you have to beat up on there, slam down, and then take control that way. After that, there's also, on the third stage, really ain't much difference except they took out the second cave area, and they also took out any, they took out that maze, that slight maze where you have to solve the jumping puzzle you loop, or you have to also go into the door where it loops. They took out that completely, and all you have to do is just get to the end of the cave, beat up enemies, and then go on to mission 4. Oh yeah, there's also one slight bit at the end of the forest where you have to drop down on this bridge, and then once you're on the bridge, you have to beat up some enemies as you you have to drop down off the bridge and beat up some enemies going into the rock cave, including another Bobo. I'll get to them in a moment. Another thing is that, and after you get through the cave, it goes to mission 4. Mission 4 actually starts where, Mission 3 ended in the, where the last room in Mission 3 on the NES version where you're climbing down. They basically put that at the beginning of Mission 4, and you have to climb up the rock wall and beat up Linda along the way, along with a few other enemies, and a couple waves of enemies at the door of the place. Pretty much another side-scrolling area, but it ends with, and also again ends with a flat area on top where you can free roam and beat them up. And the last level has a few different little tricks and tracks where you have to, where there are some, there's this one, it has a little beginning bit where you have the wall coming out and trying to kill you, and it also has the little, but it also has this new trap where these doors open up and spikes show up and it has this weird gravitational force. I don't understand it. It's like the room's trying to suck you in, and there's spikes in it, instantly kills you. Get to that later. So pretty much the level design throughout the entirety of the game is pretty interesting, and it's pretty cool. So, and so pretty much with all the pros, this actually turns out to be a really awesome game. But there are a few cons that do prevent it from being perfect. Con number one is a Bobo. I like a Bobo. He had a big adventure. A Bobo sucks in this game. He has some abilities that actually come in Double Dragon 2 for the NES, where the big guy can grab you and start punching you. I think also all the Arnold Schwarzeneggers and the Bobos in that game can do that too. He has a move where he can just grab you and start punching you, and then he also has another, and he also just has, his punches do so much damage, it's ridiculous. Fighting a Bobo in this game is like one of the hardest things in the game, and he always pops up in really bad situations too. The first time you fight him, it's actually kind of fair. You have full health. You enter a room and he's by himself. And this is when you first meet him, and this is where you're first going to have trouble with him because he will just drain your health. Nothing in the game will even come close to draining your health as much as a Bobo. And that actually comes to my second con in this. Anyone that's not a Bobo, and Chen is also pretty dangerous. He's not bullcrap though. He has like one new move where he like does this little spinny thing. Not spinny thing. He jumps back and launches a kick. I think another move from Double Dragon 2. I think the ninjas did that. Where they like hop back and do like a forward attack. So other than a Bobo and Chen, the other enemies in the game are really easy. Like, they barely do any damage to you unless they have a weapon. And even if they have a weapon, they still barely do any damage to you whatsoever. I mean, in the long haul, after you fight them and after fighting a couple of Bobos and several Chins, you'll probably die a few times. But other than that, it's pretty hard to get killed by anything that's not on a Bobo or a Chin. I always think that's kind of weird, because it's kind of unbalanced like that. It's like, oh, it's not a Bobo or Chen, I can just defeat you in like 5 seconds. In fact, some enemies you literally can. If you do a kick combo and do your roundhouse kick, and it connects, some enemies just die after that, because that roundhouse kick is so powerful. Sometimes they won't. Enemies have different health bars, but they don't really have any indication when they're going to have a more powerful health bar. It's just they're not dead. It's weird. Another con in this game is that a lot of the sections of the game have really cheap instant death. The first obvious spot of this is in the cave. There's jumping platforms, and in the there's a couple platforms that are lava. That'll kill you, and then one horrible spot is at the very end of the cave section. There's an Abobo, and there's ground falling behind you. Abobo equals already cheap. Can grab you and after punching you a few times, hurl you into said death pit that is collapsing behind you. And it's just a horrible spot. If you're lucky, you might be able to knock the Abobo into the pit with your kicks. Only if you're lucky. And speaking of the Abobos, I forgot to mention, really the best way to deal with them, the only way I really found to deal with them, because remember, your elbow is not as powerful as it was. It doesn't even knock them down. That's how weak it is in this game. The best bet you have is just to try to use your kicks and hope your third kick connects, because if it don't, you might be in trouble just because he'll dodge it. He'll duck under it and then hit you. It's crazy. But as far as that, one last little bit of thing is the last level itself. It's actually pretty interesting after you climb up the rocks and stuff and do a bit of platforming. And get inside and get to the spike wall pit I mentioned earlier. Once you get past that, which is also instant death, just to mention. Once you get past that, oh yeah, well actually there isn't a Bobo there, but I was going to mention there's a Bobo there in that section with the spike wall, but he's actually not that bad, because the door's actually shut behind him. But as far as anything else, the next section, the last bit of the game, after you do a few rounds with the regular enemies of the game, and beat up every enemy in the game once more, Willie comes out, the leader of the Shadow Group, the guy with the gun, and he's not all that tough, although if he shoots you, it does do a lot of damage, and it will destroy you. But other than that, not that hard of a boss. You can keep him cornered easily. I was able to do it when I was doing getting my footage, so no problem. So, but again, that's kind of a con though. He's kind of easy to be. He's either too easy or can be super cheap. So it's not. It's kind of anticlimactic in a way. So, but as far as like weighing my pros and my cons. The final verdict I have for this game is 6 skulls out of 10. Skulls representing kicking Boredom's ass. So there's that. After weighing the pros and the cons. So there's that. On to the next game.